millions of jobs have been protected during the pandemic by the furlough scheme, but in just over a week's time it will come to an end. Here to explain your rights is a legal expert, Hattie Savari. Hattie, thank you so much for joining us on Morning Live this morning. It is such an uncertain time for what, 1.7 million workers who are still on furlough right now?
Yes, no indeed. Good morning. So, furlough started last year and it was introduced by the government on 24th of April 2020, and employers were able to backdate salary claims to 1st of March 2020. So since April 2020 right through to August 2021, there was 11.6 million people who were furloughed from 1.3 million different employers. So, they're big numbers. Lots of people were on furlough. And as you quite rightly said, there's still 1.7 million people on furlough at the moment.
And, there have been lots of fears coming back from furlough now. But what are some of the rights that people have if their employers don't have them back or can't afford to have them back?
Well, I think one of the most important things to say is if you're concerned about your employment position, then speak to your line manager and don't be afraid to have these discussions, because your legal rights stand really with what the government say they're going to do in terms of making changes to ending the furlough, which will happen on the 30th of September 2021. So if your employer can no longer afford to keep you in employment because furlough is coming to an end, I think trying to work towards finding out your employer's intentions in an amicable way as early as possible is really a good way forward. Trying to have an honest and frank discussion so that you can plan for yourself going forward.
Yeah, communication is the key. What about this? Is it the fire and rehire scheme? I know some companies have been using it. Quite a controversial scheme, is it?
Yes, well, fire and rehire is a term that has been used in the news recently, and high-profile organisations such as Asda and British Gas are using this approach to try and change their employees' terms of employment. Some say for less favourable terms, but businesses, have had some criticism from unions for doing this, but it's not a new approach, and it's a newish name. But it's not necessarily a new tactic, and it's not unlawful, provided that the employer handles it properly. Employment rights have been out for some 150 years, so it's well embedded into our legal system. But there are certain methods by businesses that have to be followed through in order to execute this fire and rehire term. First, for example, by giving contractual notice to end the employment, or by making the employee redundant and then offering fresh new terms of employment before they say, well, your terms of employment are going to change, and here's a new contract. While you're still employed, let's crack on and carry out the new tasks under the new terms.
Yeah. So it's the relationship you have with your employer that sounds key, and that communication, as you just said. Reports up today saying that 1 in 3 workers wouldn't take full-time office jobs. So with that in mind, for some companies who are trying to get staff back into the office, what about those who think, no, I'm actually quite enjoying working from home and I don't want to come back into the office?
Well, contractually, your employer can say to you, look, we want you back in the office. They are the terms of your contract. We want you there. Again, communication is the key. If you do want to continue working from home, or you want to work some days of the week from home, then sit down and make your thoughts and opinions and the reasons why clear to your employer. Communication, as you said earlier, is absolutely the key. But we can't sit there and say, well, we don't want our employers to change the contract terms of our contract, but we want to do that by saying we want to work from home now, or we want to work from home 3 days a week or 2 days a week. You've got to agree changes together with your employer for any terms of contracts to be able to take an effect. Neither party can make changes just because they feel they want to. Terms have to be agreeable by both employer and employee. That's really key.
Hattie, thank you so much. That's really valuable stuff right now, as we said at the top of the chat, and what is such an uncertain time for so many people. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, quite a scary time, isn't it?
Very.
Still to come.